Y'all have been busy. Hold on, let me adjust this camera a little bit. Sorry. I was a little busy trying to get that article I just posted in the chat. Y'all can copy and paste that later. It's an article from Michael Heiser. They did on on the Logos blog. That is very well done. We're going to cover the material anyway, but it goes into some detail that I probably won't touch. So definitely take a look at it. It's great. As you can see, I finally got shorn, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I am seeing all kinds of questions over here in conversation, so we're gonna have to come back through that because there's just so much here. Today I think we can actually, and I say this every time, and I'm a liar every time, I think we can kind of cover a lot of what we're talking about today pretty quickly, actually, right? Because we're gonna I'm trying to keep everything. I want to keep. I've sort of discovered with this, because it's such a far-ranging topic, I'm trying to go in small little steps so we can build an argument in a better understanding of this. Because I'm seeing some questions that we've actually sort of already addressed in earlier ones. Some we haven't, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I want to make certain that we're staying kind of narrow on some of these so we can build it, and then we can kind of put everything together at the end. Okay, I'm trying to figure out that last one from Gene, but I will figure it out. So let's say hi to everyone who's in chat right now. So we've got Cheese Freak Ginger Snap, Titan, MH1953, hi diddly ho, Gene Hudson, Mary H. I hope I don't miss anybody who's in chat currently. Looks like that's it. Oh, looks like I'm there too. MH1953, Mary. Yep. Oh, Bigfoot Michigan Rob's in the house. All right. I'm certain some other people will hop on. So, howdy to everybody. Probably do this real quick because again, there's just so much to talk about. But I want to try and keep it narrow so we can build. Because I mean, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna stay in this section for a while because I want to make certain we're grounded on this, because because this is a key that turns a lot of locks, and we need to do this because when we get to when we sort of get past all this, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And the thing is, what I've discovered is I think a lot of people who, when they talk about this subject, either a lamp of light, they either reject the Nephilim, the teachings of the Nephilim at all. Not teachings from the Nephilim, but the Nephilim, teaching about the Nephilim. They reject it, right? And they either reject it or they blame them for everything. And that's not true either. So I know a lot of this feels very slow and methodical, but we're trying to do it so we can build up the foundation for which we can actually look at them and put them in their appropriate spots, because they do have an appropriate spot and a very important spot in our theology, but we need to understand where they fit. That's the big thing. So let's just go ahead and answer the questions first, because I don't think any of them are going to necessarily interfere with what we're talking about tonight. Let's answer those questions. Let's open in prayer first, and then we can then we'll answer the questions. Then we'll get into what I want to talk about tonight. And sort of tonight's actually gonna be great because we're gonna put a lot of stuff that we've already talked about together into one sort of cohesive narrative. Make it a little bit easier to go with. And we're gonna really, like, after tonight, I think the next couple of weeks, we're going to really see how these things fit into the broader theology. But let's start with some prayer, then we'll answer questions, and we'll go from there. By the way, Alan, if I don't think he's in tonight, from Kenya, he says thank you and sends his blessings. He's going great guns over there with the money y'all been able to send. Like I said, he's in a position where $10 means a heck of a lot more with him than it's going to mean with a lot of people. So what y'all have been giving is amazing, and people are getting blessed by this, but I know y'all are blessing other people. Y'all are having conversations. I know y'all have your own Bible studies, and you're talking to people, and I know some of y'all are going to start having people into your homes. You're going to start doing Bible studies. So I love what y'all are doing here, and I love how we're talking to people, we're doing things. Now that COVID is finally settling down, there's going to be more conventions. So I'm really going to try and push my most recent book and very slowly work on a sequel to how UFOs and Bigfoot prove the Bible is true. And then I'm going to sort of shape all of my 2017 stuff into a new book. That's going to be more of a rehash. And sort of reformulation of a few of the arguments, just so it's easier to understand for most people. And then the UFOs and Bigfoot, that book is going to go from like a 36-page book to, I'd like it to be over, 150 to 200 pages. That one, I want the new how UFOs and Bigfoot prove the Bible is true. I want that sequel to really hit home and have arguments, against ancient astronaut theory, really explain what it is, how to argue against it, because most people don't know how. Really go into the depths of how we should really, be examining cryptozoology, forbidden archaeology, things like that. So for now, I'm gonna really try to promote the book. Y'all probably can't see from there, but it's hiding over here next to Zilla there. Those are actually postcards the publisher sent me to sort of get out there and let people know the book's out there so we can start seeing them in stores. I'm for Texans, what I'm about to say is going to mean something. I'm trying to talk to Buc-ee's to see if I can't get them in their stores. I am fingers crossed on that one. And Titan, that will be not the next book or the book, but maybe the book after all that is the Big Bang happened on a Tuesday. That's gonna, yes, that will be the title of at least a book happening, or maybe you know what? Maybe it'll be a chapter in my new book. You know what? I gotta write that down. Hold on. This is the joys of live broadcast, folks. All right, it's official. New chapter in the book. Big Bang happened on a Tuesday. Done. Okay, so let's open prayer, then we'll answer these questions, because there's some good questions in the chat, and I want to go ahead and get those answered. Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for all that you've done. We thank you that you have put us where we are now. It's easy for us to look back and say we would have belonged in a different time, in a different era, but that's not true. You appointed us for this time. You've made us who we are for this time. And thank you for putting us here so that we can be what you've asked us to be here and now. Help us not to look to the past with nostalgia, but with truth. Help us to see how what we should have learned from the past can be applied today. Help us not to fight and be brave for yesterday's fights, but for today's fight. Give us strength. Give us courage. Give us wisdom. Help us to value wisdom, Father. Help us to have the Holy Spirit fill our hearts with wisdom as well, that we may seek after you first and everything else second. That our good deeds are not done for our glory, but are rather expressions of our love for you, to bring people to a better understanding of you, so that you may work in their hearts and minds, so that we may be witnesses in this very evil world. As dark and evil as it may appear, and as deleterious as things seem to be, we know that you are in control of all things, and we do not fear. We know that you are simply making a way, and that you are drawing us closer to you while we're doing this. We thank you for these things, and we pray your wisdom tonight, that is your truth that is spoken, not any one of ours. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Now I can't find my glasses. Where I put them? There we are. You got to put them, get something with contrast, or you can't see that thing. Hold on. They're terribly dirty right now. It's always weird. Like, they get so dirty and you don't notice it throughout the day, and then you're like, oh, hey, I can actually see again. Strange. Okay, Mr. D Knuckle and Bell Prepper Portal Hug Monsters here. Howdy to both of y'all. I know I said hi to Gene, I think. If I didn't, hi, Gene. Okay, so let's start at the top. Titan. Okay. Jason would like to run this past you. Genesis 6:4. Now the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. Could they be the third that fell? Nephilim meaning fallen, and the Watchers were okay. And the Watchers were there to keep orders. So the Nephilim are really fallen angels, not so much the offspring of Watchers and women of that age. Anything as a result of the fallen would then be referred to as Nephilim, just like when Joshua and Caleb gave their report. So perhaps that are influenced or possessed by anything that is fallen is Watchers become Nephilim, would be considered Nephilim by that standard. My humble thoughts. Okay. We see Nephilim Watchers up, Nephilim fallen Watchers upright in the same verse. We'll see Watchers were not fallen when they took wives. Okay. And yes, you did write a small book there, but I appreciate that because that is absolutely an interesting question. Okay. So let's take each section one at a time, because a lot of this is actually what we're going to talk about tonight. Because we're going to put this all in narrative. So the first thing is this: the word Nephilim does not mean fallen ones, flat out. That is popular, and it wasn't. I don't believe Sitchin is the first one to have, or is not the one to originate this, but he did popularize it. And first of all, anything Sitchin said should be thrown out like it was on fire. Sitchin, as near as I can tell, if he could actually read Hebrew and Sumerian, if he could actually read these things, I don't know that there's actual evidence for that he could read it. I mean, literally, I've been reading some Heiser and some other scholars on him. I can't find anyone who looks at his work and says, yeah, this not only makes sense, we find this in the record. In fact, Heiser has flat out called him out. He's like, at no point in any of Sitchin's work does he ever tell us where any of this comes from. Any of the stuff in his books, he never tells us where he's getting it. He just says the tablets. Well, every tablet that with cuneiform on there has been scanned, it's been read, it exists online. We can actually search it out in there's a website that it's for academics. You can actually go and you can search up these things and find them. Do you understand? There isn't even the tablet that has the word Nibiru on it that shares the word Anunnaki. Like, his whole thing is the Anunnaki come from Nibiru. We don't have a single tablet that has them on the same, that even has those two words in the same text at all. Not even on the same tablet. Straight up, Sitchin's a liar. I don't think, if he could even read Hebrew, I'll grant him that, but I don't think he could read the Sumerian. I think he was a fraud who made it all up. Maybe he was high. I don't know. But the interesting thing is, it would be real easy if he had just said, on these tablets, I get this story. He never does that. He makes it all up. Now, let's go back to, but again, he's the one who popularized this idea of Nephilim meaning fallen ones. But he didn't create it. And the reason being is that the word Nephilim, the root word, doesn't show up anywhere else in Scripture. And that's kind of our problem. We weren't certain because Nephilim is sort of a pluralized version of a word. And so the idea was it's from Nephilim, meaning fallen. However, Heiser shows that is not what happened. Because Nephilim would actually not become Nephilim. It would become, I believe he said, Nephilium. It's a different word if you were to pluralize it. So the fallen ones would actually be a very different word than Nephilim. So here's which is why we sort of addressed this at first. The word Nephilim in no way, and this needs to be, and everyone needs to burn this into their mind on this one. Fallen ones is not what Nephilim means. It has never meant that. It actually means giant ones. And we know this because there is an Akkadian root word, and this is important. Let's talk about the Akkadian Ugaritic texts for a moment. The earlier the biblical text, the more likely an Akkadian or Ugaritic word is being borrowed or utilized. Leviathan is a borrowed sort of transliteration of Lotan. It's the same It's the same consonants, different vowels. So a lot of words are borrowed from in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew. The early texts have a lot of borrowed Akkadian and Ugaritic text. Nephilim is one of these. There's an Akkadian word, I think it's Nephel, and that does, when pluralized, become Nephilim. But what does Nephil mean? It means giants. It actually just means giants. That is why when the Septuagint was written, this is why the Septuagint is so important to us, because we have these little words and we don't know what they mean, like Rahim, which is often translated as unicorn in the King James Bible. We will see things like unicorn in there. It's Rahim, but we don't actually know what it means, which is why the Septuagint is so important, because the Septuagint is in Greek, and the Hebrew translators into the Greek, where they used other words, and they were very careful with their choice of words. And we see that again, why the word demon means what it means, why they chose these translations, is to tell us things about the surrounding culture. Like, why are they borrowing certain words? It's so that we would understand what they were. It's to put it in the broader context, and we can judge that against that. So, Nephilim are giant. The word means giant ones. That's what it means. There's no question about this. The only people who really, in the academic world, I'm going to put that in quotation marks, because academics don't even argue this anymore. It is those who really are fans of Sitchin. And that right there should tell you everything you need to know. It's Sitchin who really everyone's clombed onto. I know there are good Christian teachers who use the idea of it being fallen. I'm afraid they're just not as up on Heiser's work and other people. And there's not just Heiser, there's a bunch of people who've done this. He's just the easiest to sort of understand, and he's really the master of this. So they're just not as up on his work. So again, that's sort of that first step. Now, the second question about the Watchers, and this is important. We need to remember how I said the Hebrew borrowed words, right, from time to time from their Akkadian and Ugaritic neighbors as building up their language. In the same way that English borrows words from, because English is a combination of French, Latin, and an early the Anglo-Saxon, which is a Germanic language. It's a combination of those two, but we also borrow other words, right? In the same way, they did the same thing, and they often did it when they were trying to tell you something, right? So, who are the Watchers? Because that ties into what we're talking about here. First, actually, let me answer one of the questions. Sorry, you talked about the third that fall. In the book of Revelation, we're talking about Revelation 12. That is where we get the number 1/3 of the angels falling. Nowhere in Scripture does that show up, except Revelation 12, my specialty. Here's the thing. Revelation 12 is a future, that's an oversimplification, what I was about to say. But what I will say is this. The third of the angels falling occurs at a future date from now. That's not a past date. It's a future date. We know that because of where they fall in. Revelation 12, and again, I have a whole book about this, actually gives us a landmark, a celestial landmark, to know where we are in history, and then tells us when things occur. It gives us a timeline. The 1/3 of the stars that fall, that occurs midway through the tribulation era. That's when, or the 7-year period, because the tribulation is really the last 3.5 years. If I say tribulation period, just so people kind of get the idea, that is a future event. We've talked about this, about how the corruption of the angels is actually not a singular event. It's a multiple stage event. So the 1/3 haven't fallen yet. That occurs at the end. That's when they're all cast out. That's when God's like, all right, we're done. It's time to pick sides, right? That's what that's about. The 200 watchers that fall, this is where, and this is important. They are watchers, and they're called the watcher class, and it's a very specific thing. They're not considered gods. How do we know this? Well, the Sumerians have the Apkallu, and this is going to tie right into what you're talking about, because I do think this is a very important idea to understand. We've heard the word Anunnaki all the time. Those are the early gods, right? They're the actual gods. The Apkallu, however, are these semi-divine beings they come down, they are givers of knowledge, they have children who are giants. It's clearly what they are. And again, in the article actually that I just posted, Heiser does a great job of pointing out that it's not just we can see the similarities of the story, it's that these Apkallu are also called by another name, which translates as watchers. So the Apkallu are the watchers. They are a lower class. They're not Anunnaki, but they are very important. They are givers of divine knowledge, of wisdom. And there were 7 Apkallu initially. Now, again, you're like, but that's 7 versus 200. Just remember, it's the theme that's important, right? And in many ways, the biblical text and even the extra biblical texts are corrections of everyone else's understanding. Because I'll have a much longer conversation about that. I don't want to get too far off track. Point is, Apkallu means watcher. It doesn't mean watcher, but they're also called the Apkallu. Also are called watchers in the Sumerian. So Apkallu and the watchers, they're the same creatures. In the Book of Enoch, same thing. However, their children are also called Apkallu. So yes, their children, the Nephilim, they're also called Apkallu. And to your point, human beings are later called Apkallu, who have this divine knowledge handed to them. They're the ones they're giants who set up the early civilizations, which we'll talk about in more detail later. But I completely think that they were giants. Whole thing. So to your point, yes. And this goes back to something I said, I think 2 weeks ago. For me, being Nephilim is less about being a giant than it is about being non-human or being corrupted by these spirits. It's not just about being possessed; it's about being corrupted by them. So they aren't fallen; they're giants. But the Nephilim are more about, for me, this corruption of your genetics, and of your lifestyle by this knowledge. So we're right there. And this is why not all evil people or mighty, because not all mighty men are Nephilim, but why they call them mighty men. I think this is just coming to my memory. I think actually Heiser talks about this in the article, or maybe I think it's this article. These Apkallu, these sort of second generation Apkallu, right? They're clearly human and not divine. They are called mighty ones or mighty men because they actually built the civilization. So the fact that Genesis 6 uses the word mighty men, it's very important. Because Moses is telling us who these people are, right? That's why they're doing this, is to let us know what's going on. So yeah, definitely a thing. So again, but to just wrap up that thought, not fallen ones, but yes, corrupted. And while every Nephilim was a mighty man, that's what they're trying to tell us. Not every mighty man is a Nephilim. So I think the Nephilim is very much about genetics. It is very much about that corruption, and being non-human. That's really the biggest point here. Is it's non-humanity. That's really the key here. And next question was, yeah, I'm not watching the Biden speech. Yeah, no. Cheese free ginger snap. I like the meat puppet reference. Titan. Remember when they went into the pigs? They possessed. They can possess anything but prefer mankind. Okay, so why did they go into the pigs? That's a really interesting question because it really has some interesting connotations to it, right? First of all, and I think this is something that it was very early in this journey that I've been on to come to where I am now. Even as sort of a late teenager, I was starting to know, I'm like, why, like, the demons look at Jesus, they know who he is, right? In the demoniac, they're like, whoa, son of man, have you come to torment us before our time? I was like, hold up. How do they know he was the son of man? Two. How did they know? Why are they asking if he was there to destroy them before their time? Because nowhere in the Bible does it say on this date this stuff's going to happen, right? Nowhere. So why did they say that? And his response is actually very much, if you look at Jesus' response to that, he's almost kind of like, what are you doing talking about? Like, y'all are like, shut up here, guys. You're talking too much. And I always thought it was weird. And that's why the book of Enoch, again, is so important. We're going to read through a couple things here. It tells us all of this. It tells us the origins of the demons. That's really what we're going to talk about today. And why they did that. Again, the pigs, and it's also going to explain why they wanted to go into the pigs, right? It's all going to be there, and so we'll address that more. But it's why those spirits wanted to go into the pigs. We're going to talk about that because that's actually all of that. Why they knew they were going to be destroyed. Why they wanted to be the pigs. It's all explained in the book of Enoch, and something we usually miss entirely. Pigs. Well, the demons didn't cause them to drown themselves. Image 1953. It's that the pigs themselves would drown them. The pigs drowned themselves to avoid being possessed by the demons. That's the difference. Although it is, if we want to say that the demons drowned the pigs, and because the way the text reads to me is that the pigs were like, screw this, we don't want nothing to do with y'all, and they ran off the ledge. But if you want to say the demons did it, there are a number of people who believe that a lot of these, if those of you who are interested in the missing 411 phenomenon, are aware that there's a number of people who have been showing up dead in waterways. It is, if we look to what's often called the lunatic, and some people have even started calling it the epileptic in the New Testament that Jesus cures. I don't think epilepsy is what he had. It's very clear there was a demon that was causing that. He wasn't sick, he was possessed. But I think lunatic was the better term because he was a moon worshiper, which is why the demon was in him. It talks about how the demon would cause him to lash about and throw himself into the fire. The demon was trying to harm the body. That could be why, again, my reading is that the pigs didn't want anything to do with the demons, so they left. And they would rather die than be possessed by them. But if you want to say the demons did that, it's because and again, that'll be explained here in a second when we talk about their origins in the book of Enoch. But they cause harm to those bodies that they're inhabiting. Remember, the demoniac was cutting himself with sharp rocks. And we'll explain why that's the case here. There was enough mankind around to possess the option. And so here's the other thing. On that thought, the other thing is that, remember, they asked Jesus if they could go into the pigs. I think they knew because he was going to cast, like, it's entirely possible Jesus is going to be like, you know what? I really don't like y'all. To hell with y'all. And they knew that was a real possibility. So I think they were like, hey, could you put us in the pigs? Because they knew he wouldn't let them go into another human. So I think that's why they offered themselves to the pigs. Like, well, let us go into the pigs that way, because they're dirty, right? Because Jesus was still kosher, right? He was still under the law, so he wasn't going to have anything to do with the pigs. So, he'd be okay with them. So I think that's why they did it. And yes, it was a waste of bacon. Okay, so Gene. Titan, I've lost about 5 pounds worth of fur. But yes, I have lost a few pounds. I'm trying to definitely speed that up, by the way, because I'm definitely beating Tex on our bet. Okay, I think we might be good on the questions. Okay. Okay, there we go. I think we're pretty much good here. Okay. Oh yeah, why they about water? Yeah. I think we're hold on. Angels can be covetous. That's why. Yes, angels can be covetous. So let's talk about that for just a second, and then we'll get into the book again. Sort of the topic today. What we actually learn about the Nephilim from the Book of Enoch. This all connects, right? Again, angel is sort of a very it's not wrong in the modern parlance, but I think it's too limiting because of what it's sort of like saying dolphin, but meaning all aquatic mammals, right? You're you're not wrong per se. You're just too narrow. Angelic. This is why I kind of prefer something like divine beings or paranormal beings, or because they're a whole species. Like there are numerous species with numerous powers and authorities all throughout the ethereal realm, right? Angels are a very specific group. And the problem is it's more about function than grouping. And so I think it's entirely possible you could have an angel or angels of entirely different ranks, and they'd all still be angels because they're delivering a message. That's what angel means. It's messenger. So divine beings is a better way of looking at it, and there's just different myriads of species with different jobs. When we look at the corruption of these, if we want to say angels, it's fine. If we want to look at the corruption of these divine beings, I think we have to realize this is an ongoing process. The total number will be a third, right? Whatever that means, if is it exactly 33.33333, ad infinitum, or is it like 32 and a half, right? Whatever the actual number is, the point is you round it to a third. I think the 200 watchers that are currently in Tartarus do count in that number, because that number is a future number. It is an event that occurs at the end, but what's cast out are all of those angels or in divine beings that have fallen away from God. They are, they've lost their way one way or another. As we've discussed, the nations are under spirits, right? We know that. We've talked about that. It becomes very clear in the book of Daniel. And those spirits, right? Those spirits that are over the nations that occur at the Babel is where God divorces humanity, so he gives humanity over to these other divine beings. They weren't supposed to corrupt themselves, but they did. In fact, there's alternative stories again for what we'll see in the book of Enoch, where the angels that come down to earth, the watchers, may not necessarily have been intent initially on evil, but rather they corrupted themselves we're the ones who screwed it up, right? Either way, the point is, I think this is an ongoing process. I think the spirits that God put humanity under were initially good. Because here's the thing, right? I'm seeing the things about frogs in Revelation because I talked about that in the Revelation series. Yes, they are demons, but I also think that's actually a nod to the ancient. Okay, real quick as a summation on that, I think that the modern UFO phenomena is the religion that the Antichrist will use. I think the demons that are referenced in the book of Revelation talk about frogs. I think those are the grays. I think that's what he's talking about. I think that's what they are. I think that's, again, I believe UFOs are demonic. Well, the ones that are demonic are demonic. Let me rephrase it that way, because it's not all UFOs are demons or even angels. Some are machines, some are Nephilim, some are us, some are angels. So, it's complicated. But these divine beings have corrupted themselves. So let's actually look at Book of Enoch, right? It says very specifically that what happens here is that they show up, these watchers whose job what are they watching, right? They're watching humanity. They were supposed to help us out, right? That's what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to be watching out for humanity, and instead they kind of saw how hot our chicks were, and they want to get themselves a piece of that. And what we see, right, first thing here, chapter 6 of the book of Enoch, Semyaza comes down and he's like, he's like, hey, there we are, right? There's the, let's go get some chicks, right? What to do? Yeah. No, bell pepper. Yeah, John. I'm not aware of Bowen, but yeah, if you want to learn how to read Sumerian, cuneiform, have at it. I'm all for it. I can't, and I'm lucky to speak English, and I'm very aware of that. So yeah, definitely, if y'all are interested in that, please go do that. Report back what you learn. And yes, Cheese Freak, the Catholic Church is very welcome to the ancient astronaut theory for that reason. So Semyaza, he's over here like, okay, let's go pick up some chicks, right? Yes, Mr. D Knuckle, Earth girls are easy, and you have to be. I just like the fact that, unfortunately, everyone here is old enough to know that reference. One of Jim Carrey's, I think it was Jim Carrey's first film, actually. Anyway, so, but he's there and he's like, hey, let's go ahead, because there is this thing where they want to have kids. It's not just that they're like, howdy. That wasn't just what it was about. They wanted to have kids. And I just lost my place. Oh, no, I didn't. I was about to lose a text, rather, from another source. Anyway, there we go. They wanted to have children. And why is that important, right? In the so Titan, just in the book of Enoch or in Genesis? So or are you comparing Genesis with Enoch? Now I've lost my track. My train of thought. Okay, child. I think I think the big thing that's happening in this, because they want to have kids, they're searching to have children, right? What is God's ultimate plan for humanity? And this is important. I think this is something that we miss. The plan for humanity was always for Jesus to come. It was just going to be different. But now that he's come, that once we sinned, it required him to come in a different way, right? So it looked like, so MH1953, that's a great question. I've always wondered if the initial plan was for them to have children to pollute the bloodline, but I don't think they did. Satan, on the other hand, that may have been a plan of his, but I don't think it was. I think initially they just wanted to have kids. And because it isn't necessary, because yes, they are punished for leaving their estate and doing what they weren't supposed to do, which was have children with humanity. That's why they're punished. But one of the reasons that they're punished, one of the big things, is for polluting humanity with knowledge we weren't supposed to have, or rather, knowledge we were to gain. Hey, Mary Pettifer. Yes, Titan. Okay, so now I get the question. I'll come back to that in a second. So I think they knew what God was going to do. And they're like, you know what? Why don't we do this ourselves? So there is that pride element here. And again, they leave. And here, what's very telling for me, right, in this whole thing, is Semyaza. Like, what does he say? Semyaza, when he's like, I'm going to go do this thing, he's like, hey, because he was their leader, right? He's like, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone will have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, let us all swear an oath and all bind ourselves by our mutual imprecations to not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. And then they swore all together and bound themselves by mutual I can't even say it. Imprecations upon it, and they were in all 200. Of course, this happens on Mount Hermon. Again, this is one of the reasons why I don't think the Book of Enoch, while is more theologically important, but it's not necessarily always historically accurate, because Mount Hermon would have been created during the flood. So, again, it's clearly a Second Testament book. It's a Second Temple book, but we've already talked about that. So Semyaza knew what he was doing was screwed up. Like, he knew it. That's the big thing here, right? He absolutely knew what he was doing. So he doesn't. So they left their estate. They were still technically doing what they were doing until they took wives. That was when they crossed the line, and they knew they were going to cross the line when they did it. Yes, imprecations means cursing themselves. Thank you, Lamp of Light. They could not create. Yes, Mr. D. That's a great point. They could not create, so they chose to procreate. Exactly. Because again, only God can really create. We're in good standing at this time. Titan. While the Watchers were in good standing at this time, Sem, the captain, wanted to go tell God of their misdeeds, and we see them going to present themselves before God. Okay, so hold up. What we have there is, I think we're seeing a conflation of events. So the 200 Watchers that we are seeing in the Book of Enoch are sons of God, but not all sons of God are the 200 Watchers. Okay. So the sons of God, the Bnei Elohim that are seen in the book of Job, is the entirety of that class, right? Assuming it's a class, if not all divine beings, right? It is all of them. These are 200 Watchers from that, because the 200 Watchers are bound before Job, right? Before the book of Job occurs, these 200 Watchers are in Tartarus. So they're not necessarily. So I don't think we can conflate them. The Watchers were still in good standing until they crossed the line, which is Semyaza at Mount Hermon. That's when they crossed the line. And in the Book of Enoch, we're told very specifically that after they have the Watchers have the children, which are the Nephilim, and they are very clearly described as giants. They're teaching humanity evil things to do. It's Michael, Uriel, and who else? It's Michael, Uriel, and Raphael and Gabriel are the ones who bring this to God. They're like the four of them come like, God, the Watchers you set over mankind, and they're like, yeah, what's up? They're like, they've done some really terrible things, and so God decrees the punishment, and the punishments are carried out. And this is where things get complicated. The Watchers are chained into Tartarus for 70 generations. I've tried doing the math on that one. It gets weird. So we'll just put that to the side for a later date. So they're chained in Tartarus. That's what Peter calls it, right? Because he's trying to tell us that mankind's mythology is based on these events. He's trying to tell us something. So that's Tartarus. These first generation Nephilim they are destroyed because they have a civil war. The Greeks actually record this as the Gigantomachy. That is this war between the giants. They kill each other. This is where in chapter 15, verse 8 and 9, is very, very telling, right? What's he saying? He's like, and now, so by this point, Noah before all was warned of all this coming, right? In chapter 10, he says, then said the Most High, the Holy God and Great One, spoke and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech and said to him, go to Noah and tell him in my name, hide yourself and reveal him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy that all that is on it. Now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all generations of the world. And this is so real quickly. I guess the angel who's about great good smell. Oh yeah. So chapter 15, right? God tells us what happens with the spirits of the Nephilim, which is interesting because earlier, again, this is why Hebrew can be weird, right? Because earlier we're told of their utter destruction, right? That God's going to destroy all of it. In fact, it's still in chapter 10, right? Because he's ordered Uriel to go bind Azazel in the wilderness in the wilderness of Dudael. Semyaz and his are bound what is called Tartarus, but he says, and when their sons have slain one another and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations, the valleys of the earth, until the day of their judgment and their consummation, until the judgment that is forever and ever is consumed. In those days they will be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment of the prison in which they will be confined forever. They and whosoever will be condemned and destroyed will from then on be bound together with them at the end of all generations, and destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and those children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end. So before we're even told what happens to their spirits, right? We are told that these spirits are going to be destroyed. That's why the demons that's why Legion, all these demons knew that Jesus was going to be the one to cast them into the fire. He knew because of right here in the book of Enoch. Now, chapter 15, this is what's going to happen in the meantime. So they're telling what's going to happen, right? In chapter 8 and 9. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits of flesh will be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth will be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They will be evil spirits on the earth, and evil spirits they will be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven will be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which are born upon the earth, on the earth will be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits will rise up against the children of men and against women, because they have proceeded from them. That is why demons hate humanity. Right there. I just read everything you needed to know. Demons hate humanity because they were born of humans. Also, they've been driven pretty much insane from the ability, because they hunger and they can't be satiated. Think about that. Imagine always being hungry and thirsty and never being able to satiate that. This is why they choose bodies. This is why they possess bodies. Because when they're in us, they want to feel again. This is also why they harm the body, right? Think about it. When you lose feeling in the thing, you start hitting it. You're trying to feel something. It's a weird psychological condition, but people, like, if you can't feel something, they'll start hurting themselves in order to feel. That's why they do it. They're hungry, they're thirsty, and they can never be satiated. When they're in a human body, they can feel those things. And so they're trying to just feel anything. That's why they cut themselves. That's why they harm themselves. And in their hatred of humanity is because they were born from us, and they understand what they are. They're called bastard children. They shouldn't have existed, but they're being punished because they are inherently evil. They were straight up cannibals. We're told this. And the one reason, again, I'm not real big on necessarily the book of giants or the book of monsters, but book of Enoch makes it very clear. I'm not big on those books, but I will acknowledge they may have some degree of truth, because right here, right where they're doing all their terrible things, it does say they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink their blood. So it says that they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish. What the heck does that mean? Were they hybridizing things? I don't know. Just saying. Yeah, just being weird. Anyway, so this is the origin of demons, and so Titan. Because Titan, you said something, and yeah, I want to go back to that. But I think so you're talking about they saw, and Adam, yes, I your connection of Adam and the word saw, right? Adam saw, and then the Watchers, they saw. Completely agree. That is absolutely a connection. And that connection is there to be picked up on. Remember, this is poetic language. When we see repetition of words, repetition of thoughts, repetition of ideas, it's telling us something, right? We're meant to draw those parallels, which is actually one of the reasons why I'm becoming more open to the idea that Genesis 1 is the creation of humanity writ large, and then chapter 2 is the creation of Adam as a representative for humanity. That's why I think that's not a terrible idea, because we see this sort of in the story of Abraham, right? God divorces humanity after Babel, but then he takes one man and pulls him out and sanctifies him. Just saying, there's a lot of overlap in that idea. So, but yes, the Watchers saw, Adam saw. It's the same pattern, same repetition. It's just they're setting up that dichotomy, right? Right. So that's why they asked his Majesty, "Have you come to condemn us?" They'd heard of him, but they hadn't met him. Correct, Titan. The demons in the demoniac, they had not met Jesus, but they knew he was coming. And when he showed up, they recognized him for who he was. That's the thing. Yeah. Lamp of Light, I would agree with you on that one. Okay, so Lamp of Light, we're going to come to that in a second. So, okay. Here's where things... So, Cheese Freak Ginger Snap kind of jumped to where... So, let me sum up where we are, because this is where we're going, I think, really going to be exploring next episode. And, yeah, that's where this, the whole Bigfoot mermaid thing starts to come to question. So let me sum up what we've learned from the text of Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch, just as summation, so we can really start to ask that question. What do we know? We know in Genesis 6 that this event, 200 watchers, 200 watcher class angels, probably not the only watchers, but at least 200 of them, they descended. They knew they were going to commit a sin, but they did it anyway. They mated with humanity, and they exchanged knowledge of weaponry, iron smelting. Like, they took us from the Stone Age to, I would actually think, the early Iron Age, if not maybe even late Iron Age. That fast. They taught us magic. They taught us astronomy. They taught us math. They taught us everything, including warfare. Azazel specifically was the one who taught the making of swords, of weapons. The angels didn't have to teach us how to be evil, but they certainly made us more evil. how did, and so they had their children, they exchanged this information that made us more evil, that advanced our society, with this ancient knowledge. How, and their children were the giants. They were that second generation of they were the first generation of Apkallu. They were earthborn. They were Titan. That's exactly where we're going to go. And Azazel is going to get his entire. So let me say this: Azazel is going to get his entire, and a whole episode for him, right? That's the main thing. So Azazel is going to come up, and we kind of need an entire episode for him, because that is so crazy what he is, and his sort of everything he's involved in. But yeah, Azazel is about this. So Azazel is the one who teaches the warfare. Their children are giants. They're cannibals. They are oppressive. They rule. And this is what I'm taking from all the text and from what Peter's trying to tell us in his book. Here's what I think is happening. They come down. The Watchers are actually worshipped as gods. It's not this is not explicitly said in the text. This is my reading, so take it. You can just be like, that's what the crazy dude who draws at a desk talks about. I think they came down. I think they not only exchanged knowledge, I think they were seen as gods. I think they made themselves very clear what they were. Hold on. I just saw something. Image Mary Pettiford. No, Mary, I'm not saying that she is possessed. In fact, I'm saying that there are different psychological conditions that cause people to cut themselves. It's the same. I'm not saying that she's doing it because she's possessed. I'm saying that possessed people do it oftentimes for very similar reasons. The demons inside humans are often insane, but they're also suffering from this lack of feeling and sensory deprivation. We see that with humans who are experiencing mental illness or have lost feeling in extremities. They will harm themselves. It's not that people who harm themselves have a demon per se. Some might. It's that the demons are doing it to humans for the same reason. The question is, why would the demons run into water? Well, again, I thought the pigs were just fleeing the demons, but we do see where a demon was throwing a child into fire, or a young man into fire. Why? Because the demons want to feel pain, because they don't feel anything. So it's not that your friend has a demon, but rather she's suffering from a mental illness. But the demons are suffering a similar mental illness, and often that sensory deprivation. It's saying that they're doing it for similar reasons, not that she has a demon. So I think that they were worshipped. Their children were also worshipped. They became tyrants and they led armies. I think that's what they were doing, right? You have what the Greeks call the gigantomachy. This is where God's like, okay, here's how we're going to punish everybody. Michael takes the Watchers, he chains them up, and they're forced to watch as I think it's Uriel. I have the book, but we're running out of time, so unfortunately, I gotta go back to work. So God, through Michael, forces the Watchers to observe, because they loved their children. They really did. They watched their children kill each other in a giant civil war to destroy themselves. That's what happens. So this gigantomachy occurs. They all kill themselves, and the dead Nephilim become evil spirits, and they're forced to walk the earth forever. The Titans are the Watchers. Are the Apkallu, or at least the first generation of Apkallu. They're also the Titans of Greek mythology. They're put into Tartarus, and they will be led out, right, to be thrown into punishment and into fire in the abyss, as will the evil spirits and everyone who's condemned with them. We're told that explicitly. Now, mermaids actually do come up here, and this is sort of where I want to end on for tonight. What happened to the wives of the Nephilim? And where did I just lost it? I'm missing it. I saw it. I'm not seeing it anymore. So, okay. I'll find the actual. Hold on, why is that? Oh, hold on. Maybe this is it. Chapter 16. Days of slaughter, destruction of the giants, and death have gone out, will destroy without incurring judgment. Therefore, they will destroy on the day of consumption. The watchers have been made known to the women through the mysteries of women. I'll find it for next week because I can't because I know it was I just can't find it right now. So here's the thing: what happened to the wives? The translation is that they become is what happens to the wives is they become is literally it says they become sirens, right? So yeah, I was just trying to find Lamp of Light. I was trying to find the actual verse so I could quote it to you. But yeah, they become sirens. Now, here's the question, right? The question of the women becoming sirens, are we to take that as they became mermaids? Because remember, mermaids are evil creatures in ancient mythology. They absolutely are evil creatures. Are we to say that that's what they became, or does it mean something else? Because here's the problem: we have accounts of, and in fact, the only thing that bothers me more than giant spiders in um no, it's in the Book of Enoch as well. It's not in the book. Jasher gets even weirder than that. But the only thing that bugs me more than these stories of these giant dog-sized spiders in cryptozoology are the accounts of mermaids, because there are legitimate accounts of mermaids, even up to modern day. And you sort of have to ask the question, what the heck are they? How does it even work? Because they don't make sense at all. Unless they're not actually, well, let me say it this way. I don't believe that the word we're translating as siren in the Book of Enoch is actually meaning mermaid. Here's what I mean by this. We see that word used for tannin in certain English translations in Isaiah. So in Isaiah, when it talks about in Isaiah 14, right? We've talked about this. Thank you, Mr. D. Knuckle. 19:2. So I just forgot what I was saying. Thank you for the save, Mr. D. Knuckle. That's why I love this group. I just forgot what I was saying. Dang it. Too many things going on. Oh, there it is. Isaiah 14. We've talked about that, right? Because that's the fall of Babylon. It talks about, these evil spirits that are dancing. Well, the thing is, a word that is translated often is sirens, is tannin. It's sometimes translated as sirens, other times it's translated as dragons. Why? Because tannin means water monster. That's what it means. But we have to understand, in the context of Babylon, Babylon's landlocked. There shouldn't be water monsters in it. Well, we see this in the Greek translation of the Septuagint. It's clearly meaning demons, right? and we've talked about this in other earlier broadcasts about how Isaiah is using the Leviathan as a connective sort of tissue with Satan, and he's using Tiamat as sort of his whipping boy, for the Babylonian stuff in his book. So in Leviathan is the king of the water monsters. So Tanin are sub Leviathan. So we translate it as dragon or as siren, but when they got a chance to do it in the Greek, they said demon. It is what they're trying to say is it's a place for demons. I think really for me, when it's talking about sirens, in the book of Enoch, and that's what happens to the women, I don't think it's really about them becoming evil fish women, right? And Mr. Nichols, right, it's 19:2. Okay. And Yerl said to me, I'm starting in verse 1. Here will stand the angels who have connected themselves with women and their spirits, assuming many different forms and defiling mankind, and will lead them astray into sacrificing demons as gods. Here they will stand until the day of great judgment, in which they will be judged until they are made an end of. And the women also of the angels who went astray will become sirens, and I, Enoch, alone saw the vision and the ending and the ends of all things, and no man will see as I have seen. So it just says they become sirens. I don't think they become evil fish women, right? I think they're becoming. I think they became evil. I think they became the evil female spirits that we see. We've talked before, Lilith, right? The Elitu are these evil spirits that are feminine. They're female. They go after children, and I think that they are often depicted as being half women, women with bird-like features, specifically connected to owls. We see the harpy, we see La Lechusa, we see these other things that all seem to connect. So I don't think that they're saying that the mermaids that we see today are necessarily these women. Rather, these women became evil spirits. That having been said, I ain't gonna rule it out either, because mermaids are creepy and they freak me out. That's it. Just saying. So here's what we know, and then next week we're probably gonna talk more about. Actually, I think we will talk about Azazel next week, because I want to talk more about the Watchers specifically. But here's where we are. We've proven that the divine beings in Genesis 6 are divine beings. They're not children of men. They're not Seth's kids, anything like that. They're divine beings who screwed up. They are Watcher class angels. They came, 200 of them. They taught us evil things. They made us worse, and they created giants. They are locked in prison now, and their children are the demons that we see. They're the demons that oppress and possess people, that torment people. They are intangible evils. The things that we call evil spirits in the New Testament, that's where they come from, right? This is what they are. Now, we do have the question, right? We do have this huge question of how do we have them on the earth afterwards if, after the flood, if they were all destroyed at the beginning, if they were destroyed before the flood, right? We're going to talk about that, but I'd like to talk more about Azazel, because to understand what's going, I think to understand how we get them post-flood, and I think Titan is very much on to something when he's talking, because I think I completely agree with him when he's like, hey, maybe these future Nephilim aren't necessarily what we see in the past, but rather it's more about their corruption. I think that's exactly the case, but I do think there's still some corruption there. But we're going to explain how that all works. But we got to talk a lot about Azazel and how he sort of unlocks a lot of keys he unlocks a lot of doors for us to put some things together. So Azazel is next week. But then we're gonna be able to put a lot of these things together. And like I said, this is going to be a few more weeks because there is so much to say. And this is why it's important. I know we're going really, really slow through a lot of this, but I guarantee you by the time we're done, you're going to be able to look at a lot of people who I think they give the Nephilim too much credit. In a lot of cases, you're going to be able to understand why I would make that argument. You don't have to agree with it, but you can at least understand why I make the argument, and you can say, okay, well, if these are the trustworthy texts and these are the trustworthy studies, and then okay, we can see how we get from point A to point B, and we can kind of see where some people maybe have to take they got to stretch themselves a little more, right? To get from point A to point B. And I think the problem is even if you may be right, I think the problem is a lot of people, they stretch themselves to make a point. And the problem is once you start doing that, you get into a bad habit, and that bad habit leads you to make later mistakes and sometimes even bigger mistakes. So that's why we're doing it the way we do it. That's why I do things the way I do. So, oh, I completely forgot to tell y'all, this Saturday, we're going to do a hangout. The friend of mine that, unfortunately, I just couldn't find a time for the friend of mine who's really sort of he's into the Septuagint and understanding it. And he's done some great videos on it. He is going to be doing a hangout with us this Saturday, 6 or 7 o'clock p.m. I haven't decided yet. We're still talking about that. But it will be this Saturday. We're going to do a hangout. We're going to talk, do questions. It's going to be awesome. He's a great guy. I do recommend his videos. There are some things that he and I probably disagree on, but that's fine. That's how we roll. But it'll be a great time, and we will be taking your questions live like we always do. But we're going to try and do more Saturday hangouts, probably in April. I'm going to try and get some old friends of mine. When I was doing when I was helping them with their church's broadcasts on Wednesdays, we would get to hang out. So I'm going to bring them over here. We're going to chat up all kinds of things, probably do that in April. So it'll be fun. So we're trying to do these. I can't do them all the time, but I would like to try and at least do it once a month. So I'd like to say I can dedicate it to like 1 or 2 weekends, like pick sort of if it's not this weekend and this weekend, but unfortunately I use Saturdays for appearing on other people's shows and stuff a lot. So I'm not going to be able to do that. But yeah, so Saturday we're going to do a hangout. It's going to be great. We're going to see each other. Sunday is going to be awesome. In fact, Sunday, it depends on how things are going. I may have another plan for Sunday, but it will be good. So it'll be on this channel. The Saturday hangout will be on this channel. It's either going to be 6 p.m. Central Standard or 7 p.m. Central Standard. Odds are it's going to be 7 o'clock. I think that's probably what we're going to go with, but I will let you. I will start the broadcast. I won't start the broadcast early, but I'll create the broadcast early to give y'all some heads up. So odds are it's going to be 7. It's going to be 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on this channel for the hangout. So again, it's going to be a lot less. We're just going to talk about stuff. So groovy. We will see y'all then. And again, Sunday is going to be cool. Let's keep praying for each other. And let's remember that we are doers of Christianity, not hearers only. You were born for this time and in this place. Never forget that. Until next time, catch y'all later.